The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.
On September 14, 2022, the Monetary Policy Committee of the National Bank of Georgia, NBG, decided to keep the monetary policy rate, the refinancing rate, unchanged. The monetary policy rate stands at 11%. PMCG published economic outlook on immigration and effect of remittances on Georgian economy. According to the report, from 2010 to 2020, the number of stock immigrants from Georgia increased by 7% and amounted to 861,000. That is 23% of the country's population. In the second quarter of 2022, the monthly average number of Georgian resident visitors aged 15 years or more equaled 1,100, whose monthly average number of visits on the territory of Georgia corresponded to 1.3 million units, according to the National Statistics Office of Georgia, Geostat. As of the document, the monthly average number of visitors has decreased by 8% in comparison to the corresponding data for the second quarter of the previous year. The government of Georgia will approve the draft amendments to the 2022 budget. According to the preliminary data, the volume of expenses will increase by about 1 billion lari and it will exceed 20 billion lari. Deputy Minister of Finance Giorgi Kakauridze declares that the budget deficit, which has been planned at 4.4% for this year, will be further reduced, and the government holds negotiations about it with the International Monetary Fund, IMF. This is The Checkpoints, authored and presented to you by myself. I'm Elena Kvanchilashvili, and the Checkpoints team is ready to give you news and analysis about business and economics. IFIs are a big partner of the Checkpoints and the BMG in general, and we even have a proof for that. In just a few minutes, you will have the chance to view Giorgi Sakadze's exclusive interview with the EBRD president that was conducted in BMG TV studio. Before the interview, here is how BMG TV hosted the president of the EBRD.
Odile Renobasso, president of European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, came to Tbilisi for a short visit as a part of a regional tour. She also visited the first business TV channel BMG during her tour around the Caucasus. Giorgi Sakadze, the founder of BMG, hosted Odile Renobasso in an interview format. Before the start of the interview, she met the team of the first business television in Georgia, and they talked about the company's future plans. This team has a lot to tell to the guests as well as the audience every day through various programs in partnership with TV Pirveli. The business community is constantly informed about the news in the economy and business with the help of our TV programs. This visit is a big event for BMG staff, since it shows very clearly that such a prominent international financial institution as the EBRD trusts BMG's team and the content it creates.
The visit of EBR president to BMG TV proves that I work in the most reliable and reputable media holding. I would like the government representatives to know this as well. Their obligation is to answer all questions. We are very good hosts here and ask only business questions.
When such high-ranking guests come and agree to any interview, it means that BMG's importance increases not only in Georgia, but also in the areas of international financial institutions.
I'm very proud that I had the opportunity to hold an exclusive Zoom interview with Odile Renobasso amid the pandemic. Now I'm very glad to meet her in person. This is a very big event for BMG, as it proves that Georgia needs this type of TV channel which will be focused on business and economic events. In general, I'm happy that international financial institutions have great confidence in us.
Don't need to say cheese.
We know precisely the role of business media for the country, and we have the ambition to be the first in Georgia and the region. This is confirmed by the attitude of Odile Renobasso towards our professional team, which creates the weather in business and economy.
I'm very impressed by the growth, and the project. So I'm a very impressive development, and I think it's very good to talk about business and to, promote good models, and explain what's going on in the economy. The countries and have been facing a number of challenges with the COVID crisis, now with the very challenging political and geopolitical environment. So I think it's very good to talk about business and how business can deal with that. All and develop this kind of information also.
Renobasso took up the role in November 2020, replacing Serge Suma Chakrabarti, who had stepped down in July 2020 after serving 2 full 4-year terms. She is the first ever woman head of a multilateral development bank. This is President Renobasso's first in-person visit to the region since assuming office in late 2020. The visit was set to take place in 2021, but COVID-19 travel restrictions led to its postponement. BMG did not miss the chance and invited the president to talk about the most important issues. The interview has started. The main topic is EBRD's plans in the region and Georgia. So wait for us. We are preparing an interesting interview for the business audience.
Finding solutions to very concrete problems.
And as promised, here is the interview with Madam President of EBRD, Odile Renobasso.
Madam President, thank you so much for being with us. It's a pleasure hosting you. I'm so much proud to say that it's first business TV in Georgia and the region. Thank you so much for hosting us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Us. Thank you. Tell me about your tour through the region and about the existing meetings, ongoing meetings in Georgia. As far as I know, your meetings are held with both private sector and governmental agencies as well, please.
So indeed, it's a tour in the Caucasus.
Yes.
I started in Azerbaijan, then today, tomorrow, Tbilisi, and then I will also go to Armenia. Mm-hmm. And indeed, here I met government, number of ministers with whom we work very closely, but also the private sector, because most of our activity in Georgia is in the private sector. SMEs, bigger enterprises, and in a lot of sectors. I also met with the Investors Council, so representative of business association, different grouping SMEs. There are also bigger companies. Very interesting meeting because
there are a lot of stakeholders within this.
Yes,
Investor
and it's very impressive to see how they work together. So coming with different perspective, big foreign investors with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, but also SMEs, Georgian SMEs, and coming to a joint position on what is key to develop economic activity, private sector in the country, and having a very strong partnership and dialogue, very effective with the government. And I think we support the secretariat of this structure, and we think it's very efficient in terms of promoting investment and finding solutions to very concrete problems, which can be financial market issues, regulation, very specific initiative that helps growing the private sector.
Yeah. At the same time, I know that EBRD is following Investment Council, maybe like a role model, because it's working quite effective in other countries as well. So,
but I think the country in which, here it's very effective. I cannot give a rank. The team here tells me it's the best one, but I think, my impression is that very effective. It's not the case in all countries. In some countries it's much more difficult because either the government is not so much interested, does not listen, or companies represent their own interests and not the collective view. So I think here you have a mix of factors which explain it's very successful and I think very pragmatic. And concrete.
Okay. Taking into consideration your tour through Caucasus countries, at the same time quite vulnerable situation within the region, at least in a big, broader picture. Post-pandemic situation, if I may call it already post-pandemic, but this 2 years and a half, it's been absolutely a precedent for the whole world. What can we say? What kind of opportunities it creates for the Black Sea region and for this particular region you are visiting?
First of all, I would like to say that post-pandemic and in view of the geopolitical context, which is of course challenging, in particular for the region, the economic situation is very strong. I'm struck by the sound fundamentals and the fact that the rebound post-pandemic has been very strong, and this year too there are some specific factors which support growth in Georgia. Probably double-digit growth is expected following a strong rebound already in 2021. So I think there are, much better than expected growth outcome. There are some temporary specific factors, but strong, also quite structural one, strong rebound in tourism, which is one of the, big driver, key driver, strong share of GDP. And I've seen some hospitality, I've met with some hospitality clients, and they told us, they are back to 80% of the level of activity in 2019.
Same official statistics, Madam President.
Yeah, so that's very good results. There is also specific factors like, people coming from Ukraine, but also people coming from Russia or Belarus.
You're talking about migration,
yeah, migration, and
might be temporary.
It might be temporary, but it might be also, it might last, because if Georgia is seen a nice place to live with good connection, good connectivity, good factors for staying. So that could be, of course, that's not, it could be temporary, so we need to, the country needs to be prepared, but for the time being, it plays a very positive role in terms of, creating new businesses, increasing, demand for products in Georgia and so forth. So this has also a positive effect on growth.
Yeah, I still hope, crossing fingers, about two-digit economic growth in Georgia.
But looking at the broad, broader region, I think one of the important elements in the current geopolitical context and with the development with Russia is, for example, the role of the region in the Middle Corridor. So as a, new logistic avenues for export between Central Asia and Europe, and maybe China and Europe. So I think there are new opportunities which the country is seizing as well, and it's the same discussion in Azerbaijan in order to develop the logistics needed to seize the opportunity and to build up on this opportunity.
Madam President, how will Georgia, there is a much, how can I call it, press on some additional values happening. You mentioned about the demand, which is created definitely by locals and from migrants and tourism sector definitely, but about logistics and about new opportunities. Is EBRD definitely looking for these new opportunities funding in Georgia? Because as far as I remember, there have been a lot of interest in various directions. I will talk with you and discuss them a bit later on, but definitely it might be Georgian railway system, which is state-owned. It might be new ports. It might be your previous interest within ports like deep sea port like Anaklia was, which is suspended and under court dispute right today. What kind of opportunities EBRD is trying to find in Georgia which will fulfill these new opportunities and new chances for further development of our economy? And regional one as well.
So first of all, we've been financing an ongoing project with key infrastructure in the road sector and so forth. So this is being developed, implemented. We just, a new bridge between with Armenia inaugurated last week, I think. So this is already something we've been doing with other IFIs in the last years. And we are indeed working with a railway company, for example, on digitalization. And we are ready
of the Georgian railway.
Of the Georgian railway. And looking at, open to discuss possible new needs. We've been also working on the port with a maritime system in order to see what is needed. On Anaklia, you mentioned, I think it's first a decision to be taken to the government by the government, and to see whether development of a new port, construction of a new port is, how to do it, and what is the business model, and so forth. There are also a number of possibilities to develop dry ports, to enhance the port capacity of existing ports. So I think there are a number of options that need to be explored and further studied. But of course, we stand ready to contribute and to engage on different projects. This is also something we've been discussing with Azerbaijan government
as well.
Of course.
Madam President, can we mention and identify energy sector together with infrastructural projects and renewable energy, green economics as definitely priority of the BRD, which you might implement in Georgia together with local stakeholders? It might be government, it might be private sector. And at the same time, I had an opportunity to attend your press conference, an online one. Thank you for that as well. And you mentioned about small and medium hydropower plants. Does that mean that large hydropower plants are not I cannot say bankable, but welcome from BRD?
So first of all, indeed, energy and green energy is key for us. We have an objective for the bank to have 50% of our investment in the green sector, and we were there last year. This year it may be a bit more difficult because of energy crisis in some countries, which has an effect on our investment. But this is key for us, and this is the objective we have for 25 and further on. Second priority for us is to be fully Paris aligned, so to have all our projects in line with and consistent with the Paris Agreement, which is very demanding, and this will start in beginning of 2023. So indeed, green energy, key priority, and development of renewable in this country is also very important. We believe there is a very strong potential, and we are not the only one to believe that. I think all developers are thinking about that and seeing the wind capacity and the solar. Of course, starting with Georgia start from quite a good position in terms of decarbonized energy, and because of the very strong hydropower capacity. So we have been working a lot with the authorities in order to develop a framework supportive which facilitates the development of renewable, and we've already financed a number of projects. I think that this should be, accelerated. There is a need really, this is a bright time to do that. And when you look at the energy security issue, the energy price crisis in Europe, I think really investing in renewable is the right thing to do. Also to support the increase in demand in the country. I met this morning with a client, Georgian company in the electricity energy, and they were explaining that in view to support the growth in GDP, you need to have more and more and strong demand, strong increase in capacity in electricity production. So I think that will be the priority for us. It's a very positive thing in this area is that it brings also private investors. And there, as I was saying, there is a strong interest from private developers, and that will be FDI in the country. No need for public government investment directly. So that's, I think, a very important way forward, and for us, a key strategic priority moving forward. As far as hydropower plants are concerned, we've been investing, and we've been investing in Hungary and rehabilitation of the dam and so forth. But we are focusing more now on small project, because for IFI, like a new, very big hydropower plant project may sometime, maybe we have some constraint in terms of, and some we are very demanding in terms of requirement for environmental and impact, which makes it sometimes challenging.
The main issue is, if I got you correctly, environmental one, yeah? But priority definitely is going to be small and medium hydropower plants as well. Here in Georgia. Yeah.
And renewable.
Renewable.
And wind and solar.
Yeah, absolutely. So taking into consideration, the institutional investors, Madam President, they are emphasizing the importance of renewable energy. Definitely so. And including hydropower plants, and at the same time, which directions of the Georgian economy you see as a potential one, which should be paid more attention from the local and investors? It's going to be definitely energy, logistics, infrastructure development. Can you add anything which is definitely priority for EBRD, which might be a good message for other investors to do more?
No, I think from our perspective, what is also very important is to support the development of SMEs. As I was saying, there is a huge potential. I think that it's very striking when visiting the country that you have a vibrant entrepreneurship community and potential. And I think that developing, for example, export capacity to Europe is there is a lot of traditional export to Russia. But diversification of export capacity and so forth is very important. That's why I was very happy to sign with a big bank here, a credit line to facilitate export, to support SMEs in enhancing competitiveness, developing green investment, improving energy efficiency, and export capacities to Europe. And I think that's something which needs to be, because this is a way you will, to increase the sustainability of the economy, not to depend too much from external factors, but really have strong growth dynamics, internal growth dynamics.
Just a few hours ago, we received another press release from EBRD confirming funding of the Georgian healthcare sector as well, which is also dynamically developing, also a part of the London Stock Exchange and etc. So healthcare developing is also like an interest of EBRD as well.
Yes, because we found a very good client, strong partnership, and really good strategic planning, good vision, and addressing needs. So I think it's an important sector of investment for us in this country.
Have the recent developments like COVID, war in Ukraine, fundamentally changed a lot of things, investment environment in Georgia, and did it change the evaluation criteria used by the EBRD before? And are these criteria changed after these developments?
I don't think it has changed our evaluation criteria, but I think COVID and the COVID crisis and now the war in Ukraine has changed a bit the way the world is seeing, global development and so forth. For example, this idea to have diversify supply chain in order to avoid to rely on one single country for one product, and then if the country is in lockdown, for example, as it happened during the COVID crisis, you are stuck without, you have, no access to production. So all these elements, now also diversification, for example, of energy supply, which is a big theme in Europe, all these elements change a bit the way investment and the private sector and also policymakers will think about growth and their strategic development. I think this is the de facto new consideration that probably were not so much taken into account before this crisis. The second element is also the importance of building resilience. To have sound macro policies, strong institutions, good governance, and so forth is very important to enhance the resilience of a country. And resilience is the name of the game when you are facing such big crisis.
Okay, and could you be so kind to tell us more about your current portfolio in Georgia, your major partner, because EBRD as a bank, EBRD as a financial institution is not just part of the Georgian economy, it's one of the biggest investors during last 30 years. And so could you identify partners and at the same time those spheres which are traditional interests of yours?
So we've been working a lot with the banking sector.
Absolutely,
and
yes.
With almost all banks in Georgia, in particular the two largest banks, and we have a large portfolio with them in order to finance. I mean, I think almost all our products have been developed in Georgia. So finance for SMEs, as a loan I mentioned, but also women in business, energy efficiency. So all, I mean, trade finance. So I think we do a lot we cooperate a lot with the banking system in Georgia. It's a real partnership. We also support their development abroad. So, for example, I was meeting with a bank which has developed in Uzbekistan, and we accompanied. I mean, that's also something which we find very important also for the future of the country. We work a lot also with, as I was saying, SMEs, direct private sector. We have, you mentioned one of the clients we have in the health sector, but we also work with hospitality sector, agribusiness, wine sector. I mean, all in this we do not have specific target. It's really opportunity, and we are ready to, I mean, working with finding clients and supporting our clients. Very often it's a partnership, so it's not just a one-off, but we accompany the development of the clients. TBC, the bank I was signing with, we accompanied them since the beginning, since their creation, and I remember the first loan we gave them, we extended to them 3 million, which was very strategic for them in their growth. So that's interesting story in a way, and long-term partnership.
Yeah, I remember the period, Madam President, when the staff of that bank was 38. Now it's around 8,000.
Yeah, and expanding and very technological. So, I mean, that's
in Uzbekistan as well.
Yeah,
quite impressive.
So that's yes, that's, I mean, very impressive.
Uzbekistan has another gain. Last just a few weeks ago, head of Georgian Stock Exchange. He became a head of Tashkent, Uzbekistan Stock Exchange. So he's there as well.
We also have public sector clients, and for example,
yes,
I wanted to mention, I mean, the program we've developed with BDC in terms of green city.
Green cities.
And the green city concept, which we now export in 50 cities,
was a pioneer
it's been developed
program.
here. And BDC was the first city in this green city program, which is now one of the flagship of the EBRD. So it's also, Georgia has been a very, I mean, interesting country for us to innovate and develop new concepts, new ideas. And I think we had done 10 projects in the city to enhance waste management, transportation with green buses, all kind of, I mean, projects all related to improving the quality of life for BDC citizens. I understand this is very much needed because the city is growing quite quickly.
I'm so much happy to hear, just not to develop, but at the same time to export all of these newly launched projects in Georgia. My last question still goes to Ukraine and this vulnerable situation in the region. We both know that we will have long way ahead about the outcome of this war, and nobody knows when this war is going to be finished. Did it change a lot your vision, I mean the institutional vision of EBRD, how to cover other projects and other activities, and how this will reflect generally to the regional economy, taking into consideration Georgia. We do have neighbors with the highest inflation, like Turkey, within the region. At the same time, vulnerable internal situation within the region. But how all these things is reflecting on your day-by-day and short-term and long-term projects?
Now, the first impact of the war on Ukraine has been for us to formally suspend all our activity in Russia and Belarus. And we were not providing any new financing since 2014 to Russia because of what happened at that point of time. But now we took a formal decision with the support of a very, very large majority of the shareholders to formally suspend and stop any project and any disbursement in these two countries. So that was the first immediate reaction and impact. And then I think we really designed a specific program in order to support the countries the most affected by the war. And the impact on some countries, so Georgia is benefiting from strong wars and so forth. You do not see immediate negative impact of the war, but in some countries, the negative impact of energy price and food price is very large. So this is a priority for us to help our countries of operation, including in the Mediterranean region, to really overcome these challenges and deal with the current situation. And in some countries, we had, for example, to provide liquidity line to to companies to buy gas in order to avoid disruption.
I was following that.
The impact of the war on the different countries, even if, all these countries are quite close, but the impact is very different, and some countries are really facing challenges. So that's, I think, and our capacity to react quickly and to adjust to the needs of our clients is really one of our priority, and the lesson also we draw from the crisis that we need to be ready each time to adjust how we work in order to support our countries of operation.
Can we resume that we have definitely a package of lessons learned after pandemic and ongoing war within the region?
Yes, indeed, you always learn from crisis, unfortunately. But I think that we learned from the financial crisis in 2008 to 2010, I think, and when you see the resilience of the banking system in most countries, this shows that the lessons learned were very constructive and helpful now, but of course we learn new lessons on how to manage, also to anticipate health risk, be prepared for pandemics and so forth.
Madam President, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure hosting you here, and thank you so much for your visit.
Thank you very much.
Up to 25 million USD to GHG for refinancing and a minority shareholder buyout. Further 10 million USD to EVEX for hospital upgrades, new medical equipment and refinancing package to support AMR mitigation and training programs for nursing professionals. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD, JC Georgian Healthcare Group and its wholly owned subsidiary JC EVEX Hospitals are working together to improve access to quality healthcare in Georgia. In a comprehensive financing package worth 35 million USD, the EBRD is lending up to 25 million USD to JHD and up to 10 million to EVEX. GHG will use the proceeds to refinance a previous loan to support its critical infrastructure in the fight against COVID-19. The loan's uncommitted tranche will also partly finance a minority shareholder buyout of GHG's pharmaceutical business. The loan to EVEX, meanwhile, will enable it to upgrade 15 hospitals and to purchase medical equipment that will enhance the value proposition of EVEX to its patients. It will also partly refinance recently matured private local bonds. The EBRD and the Korean government will complement the financial package with technical cooperation to deepen a joint work in promoting human capital development with Georgia's healthcare workforce, addressing critical skills gap for the sector. The EBRD will support the client in developing a new internally certified training program on in-hospital respiratory care aligned with international standards to pilot among its healthcare professionals. The bank will further engage with GHG to support practices for the prevention and mitigation of antimicrobial resistance, AMR. GHG is the largest operator in the Georgian healthcare sector and the national leader in healthcare services, pharmaceuticals, medical insurance and diagnostics. Its parent company is the London Stock Exchange-listed Georgia Capital. GHG and its subsidiary EVEX have been bank clients since 2016. EBRD President Odile Renaud-Basso, who is touring the Caucasus this week signed the agreement, saying it is great to be in Tbilisi signing this agreement with our long-standing clients in person. With our support, they have played a significant role in Georgia's ability to fight COVID-19 pandemic. We are delighted to help strengthen their operations and bolster Georgia's healthcare infrastructure for years to come. Irakli Gogia, CEO of the GHG, said, "I'm very pleased to announce that GHG and one of its subsidiaries, AVEX Hospitals, successfully completed another 2 long-term funding transactions with EBRD, supporting the sustainable growth of our group. I once again want to thank EBRD, our long-standing partner who always tries to help businesses to develop and protect the well-being of our citizens." The EBRD has invested almost 5 billion euros in Georgia to date through 270 projects, with more than 80% of those in the private sector. The bank's key areas of investment include the financial sector, sustainable infrastructure, manufacturing and services, and small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs. This week marked the 30th anniversary of partnership between the World Bank and Georgia, a dynamically productive cooperation that has positively impacted the lives and livelihoods of citizens across every region of the country. As a testament to the progress it has achieved, Georgia chose this occasion to sign the IDA World Instrument of Commitment, culminating its transformative journey from an IDA beneficiary to an IDA donor and a full-fledged contributor to the global effort of ending extreme poverty. I was honored to be a moderator of a very interesting session where the 3 decades of this fruitful cooperation was overviewed, and some priorities have been underlined that might take Georgia's cooperation with the World Bank even further.
This year we mark 30 years of partnership with Georgia, and maybe the best way for me to answer the question of what are the challenges for Georgia, given the challenges that we're facing in the region and indeed in the world, the best way to answer that question is to just look at how Georgia has developed over these 30 years, starting from the independence. And the early years after independence were very, very difficult. But Georgia, with dedication and creativity, actually worked through the challenges little by little, focusing on service delivery, which continues to be very important, development of infrastructure that is increasingly green and taking into account climate and resilience, and also making sure to continue to build institutions and have robust macroeconomic policy environment to attract investments, increase productivity, and create jobs for the people in Georgia for the future.
Today to celebrate 30 years of partnership between the World Bank and Georgia. I must say that I am incredibly proud as the regional director based here in Georgia to look back upon this really truly remarkable and very unique relationship. Why is it unique? Certainly, we have provided financing of close to $4 billion over these past 30 years for countless of projects to increase energy reliability, help build new schools and hospitals, reform curricula, focus on key infrastructure such as the East-West Highway. But much more importantly, I believe that this partnership has really withstood the test of time and was there during the critical periods of Georgia's development, such as the transition in the early 1990s from a Soviet economy, a planned economy, to a market economy, such as in 2008, following the war and the global financial crisis, where we provided immediate assistance, both in support of IDPs, but also budget support to strengthen up the economy during a very difficult time. And then finally, during these very turbulent times, during the COVID period and now also post-COVID period, where again, our partnership showed just how much of an impact we can make to save people's lives and protect the economy and help the country move forward.
What can Georgia do to build a resilient, innovative and stable economy? This was one of the main questions with ADB's chief economist visiting Georgia. Here is a sit-down interview with Albert Park in Forbes Georgia studio ahead of the economic growth outlook for Georgia, which will be released next week. I would like to start our conversation with a very specific topic, and that's a middle corridor and the importance that the Black Sea region is gaining and the momentum that it is gaining in light of the sanctions and all sorts of developments, unfortunate developments that we see in Ukraine and beyond. How is Georgia positioned in this bigger picture today?
Well, I think the middle corridor and developing it to be an efficient transport route is a real opportunity for Georgia. Obviously, the opportunity is being created by the current circumstance where there's a strong incentive to ship goods through Georgia to Turkey through the rail line or to the port to the Black Sea. And I think it's a moment where it's important for Georgia to do what it can to facilitate trade, both in terms of making sure the infrastructure is well developed, but also a lot of the regulations and other barriers, procedures that often can impede trade across borders. The more it can progress in that area, the more it can benefit from developing the middle corridor. At the same time, just becoming a hub for shipment is it's not the same as really creating sources of productivity growth and innovation that can drive growth over the long run. So given that Georgia has strong institutions relative to a lot of countries in the region in terms of governance and finance, et cetera, it could, the greater kind of flow of goods through the country, through the middle corridor, could provide additional opportunities to provide other types of service sector support to that activity. But at the same time, I think Georgia, of course, needs to push on many different fronts to continue investing both in people as well as in capital that can promote high productivity activities.
Yes, you mentioned infrastructure, and the Georgian government has resumed talks about building Anaklia port again. Do you think this is the right way to go now, at least?
Well, I don't know about all the politics behind some of the infrastructure projects, but of course, infrastructure is very fundamental to providing support for economic growth and for greater regional economic integration with other parts of the world. And so the more that can be done will certainly be beneficial from that aspect, especially, obviously, the Black Sea is a very key trade route. So the more that Georgia can develop its capacity to ship goods through there will be beneficial, I think.
You also mentioned that there are some other economic drivers that need to be in place so that the growth is more stable and more sustainable. What are these? What could be these main drivers for Georgia?
Well, one thing is investing in human capital. Georgia still is primarily a service sector economy, so you would like to develop kind of more higher productivity, high-level business service activity. That certainly requires well-trained workers, but really at all different types of, even if you think of things like tourism or even basic trade activities, there's certain types of skills that need to be developed. And so I know the ADB has been supporting efforts to improve the vocational education system in Georgia to help provide more workers with skills that are being demanded by employers. And the government has a very, I think, good plan to try to bring the private sector, different business sectors, and involve them more closely in the design of the standards that are being taught in vocational colleges and to expand the number of training centers in the country.
What about the diversification of the economy? You mentioned services center earlier. You mentioned innovations and all sorts of like diverse spheres of the economy. Do you think this is the right time for Georgia to diversify further from Russia's economy?
Well, there's different types of diversification. I think if you're talking about regional diversification in terms of who you're trading with or investing with. I think the process of diversification away from Russia started even before the war. The war perhaps may accelerate it, but you know, Georgia signed free trade agreements with the EU, with China, and trade has really been growing in those aspects as well. And I think most people would say that diversification in general makes a system more resilient, and everyone cares about resilience after the pandemic shocks that we've been witnessing and the war shocks that we've been witnessing in recent years. There's another type of economic diversification, which is diversifying across sectors or sources of growth, and I think for Georgia, there's a concentration in services. I think there's a question about whether Georgia can develop more manufacturing capabilities. And certainly, since there's quite a lot of the labor force in agriculture, trying to support agro industries so that materials are processed in Georgia and then exported is an opportunity. And some of the things that we know Georgia is good at, like producing wine, I think those areas can also be further developed to generate higher quality products and have larger global markets for production.
Wine is actually a very good example for my question, because it is heavily dependent on Russian market, and
right.
You know, we see that's why when here in Georgia, when we mention diversification, we almost always mention how we can diversify away from Russia because of the
Well, for wine, I don't think we want to produce less wine, right?
But politics as well.
Right. I mean, wine is so great here. I've really enjoyed drinking some of it since I've been here, but. In that case, diversification isn't really about reducing wine, but trying to find other export markets and meet the quality standards and taste standards of other parts of the world. And I think there's certainly potential for that.
Fitch Ratings wrote about Georgia that currently Georgia is actually benefiting from Russia-Ukraine war, and Georgia's economy is benefiting from it. What is ADB's view on that?
Well, we're upgrading our growth forecast for Georgia as well as many other economies in the region, partly because we overestimated the negative impacts of the war, you know, and it was natural because being right next to Russia, having so much trade and investment links, I think there was a thought that it would be a big negative shock. And we underestimated the positive aspects, and so I think now we're realizing that there have been clear benefits. The most notable has been, you know, the increase in financial flows or remittances into Georgia, and that partly is Russians moving money into Georgia, but it's also Russians coming to Georgia as tourists or staying here, or even moving businesses to Georgia, businesses also moving from Belarus. And so there's been a flow of people and money into the country, and that has supported more consumption because these people have to spend money on housing and food and other things. And so I think that has helped boost growth in Georgia. And the other positive benefit of the war for Georgia has been this diversion of trade through the middle corridor.
Looking forward, do you see that that effect maintained in the long run on Georgia's economy?
That's a very good question, because you could imagine that some of these could be reversed if the war ends. And we don't know what that's going to look like, of course, and whether sanctions how long they will persist even after the end of the war. I think in most of our modeling and forecasting, we are predicting that some kind of sanctions regime will continue against Russia for some time into next year. But then, you know, eventually it could be that Russians who have come to Georgia will all go back. right? And so they'll take their money with them, and that will reverse some of the positive benefits. It could be that trade routes open up again, and so there's less demand for the middle corridor. So I think, obviously, from a strategic standpoint, and thinking about trying to make these benefits more persistent, I think you need to seize the opportunity now and try to lock them in, right? So if you can really facilitate trade through the middle corridor and make progress, so you become very efficient, and then people who have now trading through this route, they find, hey, this is great. Maybe they won't even want to go back to the old route once, because there are certain natural comparative advantages to this corridor, right? And you want to, that's why you really want to really facilitate, pursue a lot of trade facilitation measures to make this a desirable route forever, right? And similarly for Russians and the funds or other businesses that come in, I think you want to try to figure out if there are certain parts of that business that that create capabilities or opportunities that could be supportive of growth over a longer period. Then maybe if it's a good environment here, maybe those will also stay longer. But you know, everything has been changing so fast,
Exactly.
and will continue to change. It's a little bit hard to predict, obviously, what the future will be, and thus how much of the current changes will revert back to the way they were before.
Yes, we mentioned several times sanctions on Russia. What is your take? Are these sanctions working? Are they effective? And for what?
Well, I'm not an expert really on the political implications of the sanctions.
No,
economically, I think
definitely.
The main result of the sanctions has been to really create a spike in energy and commodity prices, I think, or to make that maybe even greater than they would have been without the sanctions. But that's natural, given the goal of the sanctions is to just block the flow of resources. At the same time, Russia has been pretty successful in selling its oil, diverting some of its energy to Asian markets, and there are many countries that have not joined the sanctions. And so it's not clear, at least on the energy side, how much the sanctions have actually hurt Russia, if that was the goal in economic terms, of course. I think some of the other sanctions over time will be probably painful for Russia, and so I think it's creating reduced forecasts for the economic performance in Russia, certainly, because there are many things still that Russia needs, like airplane supplies, these things which are going to become more and more of an issue. So I think it's certainly going to hurt the Russian economy over time. How much and whether that has some political implication is very unclear to me. Meanwhile, the rest of the world, especially the rest of Asia, has been negatively impacted by these big increases in energy and food prices. Asia has been able to weather that storm pretty well thus far. But after 2 years of dealing with a pandemic and then this shock as well, I think many governments are stretched a bit thin in terms of the availability of their public resources to really deal with all of these issues, to support vulnerable groups, at the same time keep reinvesting in future growth. It's just it's a challenge, I think, for everybody. But I think we're still optimistic. Asia is still growing fast relative to the rest of the world, and still will be kind of, I think, the leader in driving global growth going forward.
Looking at Georgia and the region, where would you position Georgia in dealing with this multiple shocks that we've seen hitting the world? First pandemic, now this war.
Well, I think if you just look at the data, Georgia's done quite well, right? Because like most countries, they had a big negative growth rate in the first year of the pandemic. But last year, growth was over 10%. The first 7 months of this year, growth rate's over 10%. The level of GDP now is higher than it was before the pandemic, which you cannot say for many other countries in Asia. And moreover, they seem to be in a pretty good macroeconomic state in the sense that they don't have a huge debt relative to their GDP, like some other countries that are dealing with some debt issues. The central bank is a very capable manager of the economy. Of course, there is inflation, which is now projected higher, but a lot of that is due to just the higher energy prices and food prices. But we're advising governments throughout the region to be very, very vigilant about the inflation risks and not to fall behind the curve and to make sure that inflation doesn't get out of hand. And we're already seeing that in many economies in the region, that central banks are now starting to step up and try to make sure they are not too slow in addressing the inflation issue.
Looking forward, what is ADB's focus of cooperation with Georgia? What will be some of the main topics of the working agenda with Georgia?
Right. Well, Asian Development Bank has been a long-standing partner of Georgia, trying to support Georgia's development. We've done in the past a lot of infrastructure projects, especially road infrastructure, and we're still committed to supporting infrastructure goals and developing the middle corridor, et cetera. We're also, as I mentioned, trying to increase our support for vocational education and the development of human capital and skills in the labor force, which we also see as an important contributor to raising productivity in the future. The Asian Development Bank is also now aiming to become the climate bank for Asia and to put a real focus on supporting countries' plans to address the climate challenge. And so we're also very keen, both our public lending, but also our private sector operations to support efforts to invest in renewable energy and to help Georgia make progress on that aspect as well.
When you say renewable energy, what do you mean under that? I mean, do you mean both hydro and I don't know, wind, sun, whatever. Do you mean hydro as well? Because we know that it is a tough challenge.
It's a tough choice. Yeah, I've
for
heard
Georgia.
That it's
we've had a major case with Namakwani.
Of course.
So yeah.
Right.
So is it your focus as well?
I don't know enough about the details of the specific projects. I don't think we're currently, have a proposal to fund big hydropower in the region, but I think hydropower. There's also smaller dams which are maybe less environmentally threatening, and so unfortunately, I'm not familiar with all of the details of them. Okay. But just in general, I think we stand ready to support the government's efforts and the private sector's efforts to develop renewable capacity when there's a consensus that this is the right thing to do for Georgia.
The FSU Caspian and Black Sea Markets International Conference was held in Batumi this week. Argus Mineral Fertilizers 2022. FSU Caspian and Black Sea Markets is the region's largest international conference, bringing together a wide range of key producers, trading and transport companies, infrastructure owners, shippers, exporters, banks and other financial institutions, as well as relevant government agencies. As part of the conference program, participants were able to visit Batumi's fertilizer transshipment terminal owned by WonderNet Express Investment Group and Tramo. Our reporter Georgi Arounia worked on the ground, and he will tell us more about the conference and its outcomes.
Hi there. We're here in Batumi attending an international conference about mineral fertilizers organized by WonderNet Express Investment Group and Tramo. This conference is crucial not only for Achara region, but Georgia and the whole Caucasus region, because such conferences and companies organizing them are the main drivers of the Georgian progress. Argus Mineral Fertilizers 2022 is the region's largest international conference, bringing together a wide range of key producers, trading and transport companies, infrastructure owners, shippers, exporters, banks and other financial institutions, as well as relevant government agencies. During the conference, several distinguished speakers appeared before the audience. One of them was the General Director and CEO of the Wondernet Express Investment Group, Mamuka Murjikneli, who talked about the region's imports and exports and the changes in the fertilizer trade flows. Mr. Murjikneli discussed the new opportunities created by Georgia's largest dry cargo port.
This is a very interesting conference, and I'm very happy that such a distinguished guest arrived. One of the leading companies are present today here on this conference. One of the leading companies in producing of fertilizers, companies that are involved in transshipment, trading houses as well. So it makes us very happy that we are part of it. We as a Wondernet Express Investment Group, we've been partners of Argus Media for a second year now. And this will, I think it will make it will bring more interest and more investment to Georgia as well, because as we can see, all the leaders of this industry are here. And definitely I'm sure that they will make this decision to make investment into Georgia as well.
In attendance was Igor Bratsev, growth manager at Quest Group, the conference's global partner. In conversation with BMG, Mr. Bratsev talked about the importance of the conference and Georgia's role in the region.
This conference is dedicated to the market of mineral fertilizers in Central Asia and Caucasus region. Today, the production and transportation of fertilizers plays a very important role in averting a potential food crisis. Fertilizers are produced in large quantities in Central Asian countries, and there is a great demand in the world. The transport corridors that connect Central Asia and Europe pass through the Caspian Sea and Azerbaijan and end up in seaports of Georgia. This is the reason why more than 250 delegates representing manufacturing companies and factories, as well as ports, forwarders and state organizations, visited Georgia. There is a great interest in increasing the turnover of cargo passing through the ports of Georgia, and we are glad that Georgian business and the state devote a lot of time to this issue. Cargo turnover is increasing, infrastructure is improving, and we hope that this conference will further develop this business.
The list of speakers included Natalia Demchenko, the branch manager of Astra Georgia, who talked about the transit of fertilizers from Central Asia to Europe and the importance of Georgia as a logistics hub.
This conference is very important for Georgia because today the Caucasus region has turned into the hub for fertilizers coming from Asia. Thus, talking about transportation of urea and sulfur through Georgian ports is critically important for Georgian economy.
In attendance was Kamal Husseinov, the founder and CEO of IK Group, the general partner of the conference. In conversation with BMG, Husseinov emphasized the importance of Georgian ports.
The conference is particularly important for Georgia because Georgia, thanks to its Black Sea ports, has become a logistics hub. We have been cooperating with the ports of Batumi and Poti for a long time. Last year we transported 500,000 tons of granulated sulfur through Poti port. Within the framework of this event, leading specialists in this field gathered, which will promote new collaborations.
As a part of the conference program, participants were able to visit Batumi's fertilizer transshipment terminal, owned by Wondernet Express Investment Group and Tramo. Construction of this fully automated terminal was finalized in 2021, with a total investment of $25 million. Georgi
Aronia was covering the international conference from Batumi. Cooperation between the Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development of Georgia and the international partners resulted in the Forum on Trade and Investment Opportunities Diagonal Accumulation between Georgia, Turkey and EU, which was held in Tbilisi. Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development Levan Davitashvili stated that the Republic of Georgia and the Republic of Turkey have had exceptionally close relations for many years, which is a visible example of how trade and economic cooperation can develop develop between two neighboring countries and how they can use each other's potential to increase the well-being of their nations. Davitashvili also thanked the USAID Economic Security Program and the German Society for International Cooperation, GIZ, whose support made it possible to organize the forum on the diagonal accumulation. The Vice Prime Minister emphasized the significance of the implementation of diagonal accumulation between Georgia, Turkey, and the European Union, which, in his estimation, will add an additional impetus to the deepening of trade relations, as well as encourage and strengthen the export opportunities to both Georgian and Turkish private sectors. Business community attending the forum got acquainted with the results of the study, investment and export promotion between Georgia, the EU, and Turkey through diagonal accumulation, prepared following the order of the Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development of Georgia. The Economic Security Program of the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, and the consulting company PMCG supported the implementation of the study. It was noted at the forum that according to the diagonal accumulation implemented between Georgia, the European Union, and Turkey from April 29, 2021, it is possible to export industrial except agricultural products produced in Georgia using Turkish raw materials to the EU market under the free trade regime. Diagonal accumulation, together with the growth of Georgia's export potential to the EU, will contribute to the inflow of foreign direct investment from Turkey. In addition, by promoting the creation of joint ventures by Georgian and Turkish entrepreneurs, diagonal accumulation will encourage innovation and create new high-paying jobs. Investment and business environment in Georgia was also discussed within the framework of the forum. B2B meetings were held between Georgian and Turkish companies which expressed interest in investing and or creating joint ventures in the context of diagonal accumulation and the free trade regime. Minister of Trade of the Republic of Turkey, Mehmet Mush, Minister of the Finance of Georgia, Lasha Kutishvili, USAID Director of Mission to Georgia, John Pennell, Head of Enterprise Georgia Agency, Mikhail Khidureli, President of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Georgia, Georgi Pertaya, as well as the representatives of Georgian and Turkish business sector attended the forum. USAID, through the Economic Security Program Clusters and Development, which is funded by the European Union and the German government, the Enterprise Georgia Agency of the Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development of Georgia, and the Georgian Chamber of Commerce and Industry supported the forum.
It's always my pleasure to witness new connections establishing between many representatives of the Turkish and Georgian companies. This year, we are celebrating the 30th anniversary of our diplomatic relations. Therefore, I am very glad to join this celebration with a significant conference for the business communities of both countries. We have excellent political and commercial relations with Georgia. Authorities in both countries have been devoting their time and energy to boost such a high level of relationship even further. In the last couple of months, we had major steps like the decision to liberalize the bilateral and transit transportation between our countries. Today, I have with me the representation from the biggest business organizations, TOBB, Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and DEIC, the Foreign Economic Relations Board. Further, there are around 80 companies traveling from Turkey, and together with our investors in Georgia, there will be around 100 Turkish business people attending the conference. It will be a major event organized for a long time. By August 2022, our trade volume increased more than 50% and reached to $2 billion. At present, Turkey is the third biggest investor in Turkey. I will continue to encourage our community companies to invest in the bright future of Georgia. In fact, as you all will witness today in a short while, we are going to sign the decision and the protocol for extending the scope of our FTA to trade in services and providing additional agricultural concessions. I am very pleased to sign the said agreement with my dear counterpart. I believe our new agreement, now including services and investments, will advance our bilateral relations and will serve as an important instrument to build sustainable economic partnership between our countries. As you know well, the free trade agreement between our countries allowed us to freely enjoy a bilateral cumulation for 13 years. Today, at the conference, our business communities will listen to the opportunities arising due to the use of regional convention for the cumulation at a time when having diversified supply chains has proved critical. The diagonal cumulation is an instrument to do just that. Once more, I would like to thank my colleague for this distinguished organizations.
This is all for today. We will meet next Sunday. See you soon.
The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.